NGOs will give money to groups to infiltrate churches to give them counter training towards LGBTQ.
When I hear Christian nationalism, I think of some sort of theocratic system.
Are we saying show up with cudgels and beat people to death? The opposite.
You know, some of the stuff in, like Paul talks about the rulers of this age. You know, there's the rulers of this age are going to be swept away by the powers from heaven, and Jesus getting the coin of Caesar on it. And he's asked, like, what about this image of Caesar? And basically he says, give to Caesar what is Caesar's, give to God as what is God's. There was this idea in the Gospels and in Paul's epistles that this world is evil. It's going to do what it does. Carry your cross, be a Christian despite what's around you.
Yeah.
But I'm seeing from you that forget about that. We need power. I see a more Nietzschean approach. We should be in power. We should be controlling culture.
Well, no, it's not a Nietzschean.
I mean, look at the real.
It's not a Nietzschean approach. Or
I'm not
when
saying.
you say,
I'm just saying
yeah,
that
when you say pragmatic, you're not talking about philosophical pragmatism. You're talking about, we say in the Commons, like practical. You mean like kind of practical when you say pragmatic?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, sure, it's practical. But because it's practical doesn't mean that that's what the meaning of it is. Just to say that I live in this society too, Neil. These guys all live in this society too.
Right.
Because we're Christians, we're not supposed to be devoted to suffering for suffering's sake, right? And if we can make these positive changes, which we call these sins of omission, if you can help, if you can do something you don't, that's sinful.
Yeah.
Okay? That's a sin of omission. So it's like, why shouldn't we be making these sort of adjustable changes that we can make to the things which and conditions which are going on around us to the benefit of not just us, but everybody else? Because we know Christianity is true. We know it's righteous. We know it's real. We know it's something that benefits everybody, even if they're not Christians. Why shouldn't we be trying to rein this stuff in, utilizing our own social power, right? And what are we talking about by social power? Are we saying show up with cudgels and beat people to death? The opposite. We're saying, hey, boycott them, stop buying their stuff. Or we're saying put a significant amount of pressure on this company so they stop doing X, Y, Z. Or, hey, put some pressure on your elected officials, right, to say, hey, why don't you pass something that says you got to be 18 before you can go on a porn site?
But what you just said is there's nothing that now needs to change to do what you're talking about.
There is something that now needs to change.
Do that through
what needs to change right now is that Christians need to become and move towards and continue to stay in, when they achieve it, the dominant social power.
Which they can do through voting and...
I totally agree. They can do all that through voting and everything else. So if we say a Christian nation, like, what did you think we thought what did you think
Christian
we were saying? That we were going to bring in the Byzantine Empire, declare Trump the emperor, and then like, what did you think we were trying to do here?
When I hear Christian nationalism, I think of some sort of theocratic system where the church has actual powers that it can dictate certain things in society.
Power is a strange thing because power can be an institution that you give authority to, even if it's not elected. Like, this happens now, okay? There are certain, like, let's say the World Health Organization, right? I didn't elect anybody in the World Health Organization, neither did you. Right. But you're not going to argue with me that they're not a very powerful group.
True.
And it's because when they release their mandates, documents, things like this, people give it a lot of adherence. They like, wait, these are experts. We should listen to what they're saying, right? We have a lot of trust in them. They exercise a lot of power, right? Power is not always exercised through just voting and through things like this, but also through the trust of institutions or the trust of value structures that people have. So you could have an idea of like a Christian social order, which has a lot of power, just because they say things like, look, we're going to put significant pressure on you to put in Christian ethics from the top down. Using democracy, using voting, using your systems. And aren't we allowed to do that under your system? Aren't we encouraged to do that under your system? So why shouldn't we be just going full bore to grab as much of that power as we possibly can so that we can make those changes?
I'm just trying to figure out what the difference is then.
Between what?
Between the system we have right now that just worked.
That Christians aren't the dominant social power. That's the difference. And when Christians become the dominant social power, then you'll have true Christian
What does
nationalism.
that look like to you when they have that dominant power? What does that look like to
That
you?
significant pressures are then put on government institutions and NGOs to become an arm of Christianity rather than operate with independence against Christianity.
Okay, an arm of Christianity, what does that mean? What are they doing?
So like right now, NGOs will give money to groups to infiltrate churches to give them counter-training towards LGBTQ, right? Bunch of documents just recently released on this. I'm sure you read them, okay?
A little bit.
Yeah. So the NGOs, non-government organizations give out tons of money to various groups who go in and say, hey, look, you guys are having trouble with LGBTQ, people getting the correct counseling in your church. Don't worry. We have a special counselor, faith counselor, who come in and help assist, train you away from things like conversion therapy, this type of thing, right? So these are special interest groups by secularist organization and atheist organizations, which are trying to infiltrate the church to exercise power. We're just offering to do the same thing in reverse. Okay, how about we send in our non-government organizations and we say, hey, look, OnlyFans people, let us give you some training on how to get the fuck out of OnlyFans, right? Let us do the same thing, just in the opposite direction. Let us push forward the values and ideas that we have. And if you're willing to use force for your ideals, you can't then be hypocritical and say we can't use force for our ideals.
Let's talk about that for a second.
Okay.
People start to rebel. And you get, even if it's not the majority, let's say you get there.
Yeah.
The majority of people in power are Christian, but the people aren't. And people start to riot and destroy cities.
Yeah.
What are you going to do?
Yeah, so you would do the exact same thing you would do right now under a constitutional republic. Martial law, right?
So there's no difference again. That's what I'm kind of getting at. Like what
No, there's a difference. What am I telling you the difference is?
You're going to enforce it.
Yeah, so listen. So let's do an experiment, a social experiment, just like right now. So we can see if well, let's try it this way. Do rights exist?
I mean, they exist because something makes them exist.
Yeah, they exist inside your mind, right?
Yeah, it's metaphysical if you think about it.
Yeah, sure. So they don't exist in reality.
You can't touch them.
You can't touch them, smell them, this and that.
But they exist in
But
reality.
if somebody violates my rights, you going to use force?
You get someone to use force for you.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right. You're going to get someone to use force
You're going
for
to use
you.
the court system,
So
whatever.
you're willing to use force for a thing that doesn't exist because you believe in it.
Right. What's wrong?
So hang on. So a Christian, you think Christianity is not true, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So we believe in something also that is not true according to you, but if you violate it, we'd be willing to use force in order to do something about that like you would for my rights. So what's the difference? You saying I have a thing which does I have a thing that doesn't exist, but I'm willing to use force in order to enforce it like it does exist. How's that any different than you saying Christianity doesn't exist, but you're willing to use force as though it does exist? How's that different?
But there's big difference here.
What?
Let me explain it.
I can't wait to hear it.
With rights, we're talking about a system that
It's made up.
it doesn't matter if it's made up.
Yeah, I know, right? Exactly.
The Constitution is what makes this entire thing work.
Which is made up.
It doesn't matter. It's
Now you're getting
a
it.
country that doesn't have a constitution.
So if Christianity isn't true, it doesn't matter.
What happens if I go to Saudi Arabia and I start saying that Muhammad is whatever, and just think of something crazy?
They're going to behead you probably and put
Right.
your head on a
But
spike.
I can do that here. Why?
Yeah, you can do that here.
Because no one can enforce anything against me for saying that.
Yeah, right.
So there's a reality behind it. Something's actually working because of those
well, the
rights.
reality is the force you're willing to use for the thing that doesn't exist,
It doesn't matter.
and you're going to act as though it does exist and use force in order to reinforce it, right?
It's like saying knowledge doesn't exist, but obviously there's databases of information that are real.
It's not like saying that.
What do you mean?
You agree with me. Rights themselves don't exist.
They do metaphysically.
Where?
So,
Where metaphysically even do they exist?
well, okay, Bill of Rights, Constitution. What do you mean?
You mean to the piece of paper?
Piece
but
of
they're
paper, yeah.
constructs of the mind is my
Exactly.
point.
That's why I said it's metaphysical.
Yeah.
They exist.
Okay, got it. So that's what you mean by metaphysical.
Yeah.
Okay. So these constructs of the mind, they're not actually true. Like it's not true that you have a right to freedom of speech, right? That's not true.
But here's the thing: nothing will happen to me here where we have freedom
Not
of speech
disagreeing.
in comparison to somewhere
Not
where I don't.
disagreeing, 'cause of the use of force.
So you see how there's a
No,
reality
the
behind
reality
it.
is exactly the same. If I make up something
exactly the same. I'm not getting beheaded.
I know.
So
If I make up something in my brain, like this is God, let's say.
Yeah.
This is God. And its properties are, if you say Coors Light is better than Bud Light, you get beheaded, right? Now I'm willing to use force on behalf of this thing that you don't believe is true. Okay, but you use force right now on behalf of things you don't believe are true.
Right, but it's the process behind the whole entire system. Is that there's a Bill of Rights, there's a Constitution.
Yeah.
Everyone has these things in common. It puts
I'm not disputing that your force, that you using force has results.
Right, but if you don't have those metaphysical things, think of how different things would be.
Yeah, they would be very different.
So there's a reality. That's what I'm saying. There's a reality that is a result of the fake.
Just like the reality of me believing what you would consider to be.
I don't deny.
So what you would consider to be fake God.
I don't deny.
Has huge benefits for guys like you, right?
I agree. I was hoping we would go there. Because
So if that's the case, like we're basically
religion helps people, right? We agree on that. Religion,
well, Christianity
and other religions too. I've looked this up. I've actually brought some studies.
Some more than others.
University of California did brain scans to determine
my brain scans.
Well, there's other ones too.
I'm sure it's good science, bro.
There's studies from Duke University about meditation, improving cognitive performance. University at Wisconsin did studies that showed both of those two are correct. The point is, people who are religious do have better lives.
Yeah.
But that's why I'm agreeing with you that even if it's metaphysical, not real, there's a reality behind it. But the same thing exists for rights, right?
No, there's no reality to rights.
I just explained it.
No. You're confusing the truth with the effect. So the idea is like, here's what's actually true. What's true is
the effect is the
you
truth,
pretend
the effect is the truth, though.
Yeah, the effect is true.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And the same with religion.
Yeah, I agree that the effect is true. So neither of us are going to dispute that the effect is true on both ends, right? What I'm saying to you is just simply this, that you can't criticize people for using force on behalf of their fictitious sky daddy if you use force on behalf of your fictitious piece of fucking paper, right? What you're doing is you're just saying, here's the values that I have, and I'm willing to kill on behalf of them. Those are the values they have. They're willing to kill on behalf of them. But if it's all subjective and nonsense...
But I'm confused.
If
You're saying...
If it's all subjective and nonsense, right, you're both applying the same standard. I don't even know how you could criticize them for it.
That's what I was saying. You just came back around to what I was saying. I'm saying, even though I don't believe... It doesn't matter if I believe in Christianity or not. There's a reality behind it is what I'm saying. It's the same thing.
There's reality to the effect for you.
Yes. And so...
what I'm saying, what I postulate is that our social order, right, the social order of the United States should move towards Christian ethics. That would be much better for the United States. I mean, come on. Dawkins himself, wasn't Dawkins a guy recently? He's like, oh, I really miss the Christmas carols because I was able to wear
I love Christmas
the
time.
gayest
I
of
agree.
sweaters, and I just miss them a lot.
I also really enjoy when I'm studying ancient Greek and Roman religion. Well, there's things about religion that are great, and I don't think it's necessarily just
Christianity. So this push for the social order being dominantly Christian and the dominant Christian effect in society, that's what Christian nationalism is proposing, that we move so far away from those values that now we have other values which are beginning to overtake them. Hookup culture, degeneracy of all types. Like, for instance, you can't even really talk to a secularist now, Neil, and ask him a basic question like this. Why should we even have monogamy? Like, why should we? And I think
most people would prefer it over anything else.
Well, I think most people who have Christian inclinations would.
Yeah, but not.
But the truth is like the open marriage thing and the open relationship things becoming more popular, right? There's no real reason why
I think non-Christians enjoy.
Like, if you say two men could get
too.
married, why can't 20 men get married, Neil?
That's polygamy, though.
So what? Monogamy. Yeah, what's wrong with polygamy?
You're asking me about my preference?
Is that it? A preference?
I don't like it.
Yeah, it's my preference,
I don't like it.
Yeah.
No, but as far as monogamy goes, that goes outside of just Christianity. People prefer to be with one person, have a family with one person. People prefer that life.
Yeah, that could be. But if the dominant social order is Christian, right, we want to normalize that as much as possible is the point. So that would be like positive forms of, I would say, rhetoric. You could say propaganda. Propaganda has a negative connotation. but we would want to have real propaganda towards one man, one woman, not towards alternative lifestyles, towards things like this. That's what Christian nationalism would propose, right? I believe that the social power in the United States is even more important than the political power, because ultimately I think the political power is influenced by the social power. We've seen this with the trans movement, right? The legislation which has happened from the various powers from LGBTQ groups who have social authorities kind of given to them and social sciences which grant them these authorities. I'm saying Christians can do the same exact thing and need to be doing the same, and we haven't been. We haven't been, so we've lost that dominant edge in society, and we need to get it back.